People have lost touch with their human connection. Sometimes when people get lonely, it's because they've isolated others. Maybe they've isolated themselves. Maybe they've given up on others. Maybe those people have given up on us. But either way, loneliness is something that you have to understand, that it doesn't have to be permanent.
Welcome everybody to another episode of The Human Blueprint. My name is Angelo and we are here with Herman today, and we have a very special topic. We have a topic that I believe everybody can relate to, or at least most people. For myself, people that I know, people that reach out to us and ask for help. We received a message and we wanted to share it with everybody and create this conversation. So Herman, do you want to share that message?
Of course, thank you. So for everyone listening and watching, here's something I want to share. Why is it that in a world filled with billions of people, we still find loneliness, or we still feel lonely? That's my question to you. I want you to text me, type down below, let me know, why is it that we live in a world filled with billions of people, but we still have so much loneliness? Where does that come from? Let me know in the comments, and we'll start going through and dissecting this in our conversation. But I want to know what you think, because I think this conversation can really help us get somewhere.
Exactly. So go ahead and leave a comment below. Text 818-928-3639. We're going to give you a minute to share your answer because we really value your feedback and we want to hear from you. This is what part of being connected is all about. And so when you talk about being in a world with billions of people, and yet we still find so many people are lonely, have you ever been lonely? Have you ever felt what loneliness feels like? Let us know. And this will be a great discussion to have, especially with everything that we're going through with the current events. A lot of people are either quarantined or they're staying at home. They're not necessarily going to work or traveling as much, going out. And so a lot of people may find themselves physically more lonely, or physically to have more time to themselves.
And a lot of times I feel, Angelo, when we look at people and we dissect loneliness, sometimes people have never learned to face what's inside. Sometimes they've never learned to literally face what's there. They want to run, they want to hide. And I feel the loneliness creeps in when we don't want to face a lot of things, or we feel the problems we have are too big and we're too small. Or sometimes we feel like everyone else has somebody and we have nobody. Then it just, we compound more and more issues than they have to be.
Mm-hmm. It's like one issue leads to another, and it just turns into this huge snowball effect, and the ball gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, how many people have been through something like that? I know for me, I have. And the best antidote is to reach out. Sometimes it's the people that, even if it's like a stranger, like sometimes it's a stranger smiling at you that can help brighten up your day, or it's reaching out to a friend or a family member that you trust that can really help support you. But it's all about taking that first step. And for me, like, I feel very blessed that I have a very supportive community. I have Herman, that I reach out to every single day, and he helps me every single day. And that is just such a blessing. But if you're listening to this, you are also blessed. Like, you're not listening to this by chance. And so we've done a lot of different things to create that community. And so we have, different communities that we offer for this very reason, to help people feel like they are part of something, like they're welcome somewhere. And so we really encourage you to take a look at some of those and get started in some of those so that you can never feel alone again. But Herman, as we talk about this, I think that if you look at the world trends, you have loneliness on the rise, but you also have this social networking on the rise too, where in the past decade, we've spent so much time getting more connected on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, now TikTok, like all these different platforms. I mean, how many videos do you watch a day, or how much time do you spend on those things per day? How many users are on those things? I believe Facebook has over like, what is it, 2 or 3 billion people using the platform, almost like half of the world. And so it's so easy to connect with people, or at least interact with people in some way, shape, or form. So why are we feeling more lonely if we have this ability to use technology? Is it a blessing? Is it a curse? Is it both? Like, what's your input on that, Herman?
People have lost touch with their human connection. Sometimes when people get lonely, it's because they've isolated others. Maybe they've isolated themselves. Maybe they've given up on others. Maybe those people have given up on us. But either way, loneliness is something that you have to understand, that it doesn't have to be permanent. See, sometimes when you get a taste of it, sometimes you almost fall in love with it. Sometimes you become too much involved in it. Sometimes you become too, how do we say, closed off from so many things. Once bitten, twice shy. So a lot of times people just use that as their default of, you know what, let's just go hide, let's just go hibernate. And for us, we have to be very careful. And for me growing up, let me share this with you. I used to be very lonely. There's no one that could do what I could do. There's nobody that could see things I could see, or understand things I was able to understand. So who would I have to relate to? Who would I have as a friend, or who would I have to lean on? Or there was no community. There was no, how do we say, platforms for social networks. There was none of that growing up.
Mm-hmm.
None, zero. The social network was literally on the court or the field, or that was your network, and that's it, right?
The
And it was
playground.
who you knew right there. That's it, right?
Exactly.
So I feel one thing that I really had to embrace was, okay, how am I going to break out of this? So let's say that's all of you. How are you going to break out of yours? First thing I did was say, you know what? I had to become a better leader. So I used sport. I used all the different things of what we called the social networking back then as a means to really communicate with that human connection, so that I could really understand all the different types of people, how they operate, what's the psyche, what's the psychology, why they like this, why they don't like that, what they respond to, what they do not respond to, so that I can be a better leader. And then when I'm a better leader, then when I give or offer something to help and share, all of a sudden, I'm not as lonely. Because all of a sudden, when I do that, I'm building a bond, I'm building a reputation, I'm building something greater, right? Than just myself thinking, oh, I got this, and then just worry about myself. Doesn't work that way, right? For me, I had to learn to become a better leader. And for me, when I became that better leader, of course, you're going to be tested. Don't get me wrong. Of course, things are not going to be as easy as you may think. But the idea is you keep moving forward. And for me, when I can honestly say loneliness was not in the equation, was when I was able to be such a great leader at a young age that anything I said, people listened to because they saw the results. Anything I did, they followed like that because they saw that the results. And then once that started to happen with the trust, then when you needed to share things or people needed someone to lean on, they looked at you. They looked at you almost like as someone they could look up to, or someone that they wanted to embody, or as a role model, because you've laid out the path of somewhat that they could see, that maybe they envision that they would like to have the same results or have similar results, because they can see they have similarities, or they resonate with certain things that you've been through. Maybe they've been through worse. So that's why when we look in today's society, there's not a lot of good role models. There's a lot of people who like to flaunt things. Don't get me wrong, but that's not necessarily a good role model, right? Mm-hmm. Good role model is the ability to understand the leadership, lead through action, lead through what you do, build that reputation to the point that when people see it, when people listen to you, when people are around you, they start asking questions, the right type of questions, and you start giving the right type of answers. Mm-hmm. And then once you start doing that, I felt loneliness was no longer in the equation, because you just focus on the greater things, the leadership. The better you became, the better those people around you became. Oh my goodness, all of a sudden we start winning games. All of a sudden you take a bunch of nobodies that everyone gave up on, and we start winning the state championship, or start winning the division, or whatever it was called back then, right? And you take a whole bunch of people called the scrubs, as some people call it, and you're able to take a bunch of those people and make them into winners. That's leadership. And how can you ever be lonely when you see someone who everybody's given up on, and they're lonely themselves, and you made them into something they never thought was possible? That is special.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of my key takeaways from that story is that, yes, you may have felt loneliness, but you transmuted it into something greater. You basically took where you were at and you found a way to serve other people, to give to other people. So you're basically given those, scrubs or B players or whatever you want to call them. You were giving them something. You were giving them value. You were giving them your care, your time. And in turn, you never felt lonely again because of what you gave first. And so I think that when we talk about loneliness, there's so many different degrees, so many different types of it. But I think if you do feel lonely right now, one thing that you may possibly want to think about doing is how can you take from Herman's story and apply in your life? So are there things that maybe you're not giving? Are there things that you can do, take initiative on, and bring value to somebody else? And I know that for a lot of people, if they feel lonely, I think, depression and those other emotions and feelings kind of tend to be inside of them as well. And so we just want to let you know that you don't have to feel that way. You can take a step, you can do something greater, but it also starts with yourself. Like, you have to ask yourself, how can you bring more value? And I think that will help you really get out of that space of feeling lonely. Because when you're contributing to something that's greater than yourself, I mean, I've never felt lonely a day in my life since I've, been working with you. And in the past, like, I have felt loneliness. And what I realize now is that when I did feel lonely, I was only doing things for myself. I was only looking out for myself. I was only looking for how I can gain or how I can benefit. And it was all like me, me, me. And that is like the feeling of loneliness. But when you're doing it for somebody else, I think it's non-existent.
One thing you didn't say, and I think maybe we should say this part, okay? One thing we don't realize is when we're lonely is because we're not understood. So when I found Angelo, he was not understood. I understood him. I understand him. I knew exactly what he needed to be a better person. I led by example. He followed. He got better results. He's happy now. A lot of people who are young kids, I see the parents send them my way. My kid's broken, fix it. Well, if a kid's not broken, you don't understand your kid. You understand? And that's why they're lonely, because they feel like they want to say things. You don't understand it. So they feel like, who am I supposed to speak to, right? So that's why I share that. You can't necessarily isolate yourself. You need to reach out and find the people that can really understand you. Mm-hmm. That's why we have this text in service. That's why we made it's so easy now for people to get in touch with us, specifically me, so that people don't feel lonely. Because once you're understood, that's the first piece. Once you're understood, all the other parts become easier. But if you're not understood and you don't understand, then all the other parts become more difficult. And that's one thing we have to understand as a collective. We have to be understood. And that's all everybody ever wants. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, they want to be understood. And when you're not, that's when your peace is interfered with. That's when everything starts to snowball. That's when you start to feel even more lonely. But if you're understood and people understand you and you understand them, things become a lot easier.
And you can't necessarily force somebody to understand you, right? So for those people, I know one of the first steps you can take is to text, obviously, 818-928-3639, to leave a comment, to, we'll share a ton of resources with you. Just reach out to us and we'll help. And I know that's a great solution. Are there other things that people can do to feel understood, or is it something where, like, you can't necessarily force those pieces to align? Like, you can't force somebody, you can't sit them down and say, like, hey, I'm going to make you understand me. because the party on the other side has to be willing to understand you first.
The people that you want to understand you may never understand you until you fully understand a little bit more about yourself. That's why when people get on calls, we help people. It's to help them understand them, so that when they go back into that environment that they're misunderstood, it's a lot easier to convey messages, receive those messages, for both parties to, cooperate. But if you are not understanding you and you expect someone else to understand you and they don't understand themselves and they expect you to understand them, and it's just they keep mixed signals, missed signals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to be very careful that we need to find someone to help us understand ourselves, which is why we're offering that text, offering the DM, make it so easy for you. Do that. And then once you go back into that environment and you understand a little bit more about yourself, you're taking all these mixed pieces that are like scattered, and we start connecting.
Mm-hmm.
We start connecting. And we start putting pieces into place where they belong.
Exactly. When you say that, it actually reminds me about myself. When I started making the changes that you suggested, I initially wanted to push that on my family because, number one, they were changes that I could see the results. My results got so much better, and I wanted that for them. But the way that I explained it, or the way that I went about sharing those changes with them, wasn't necessarily the best way possible. And then for me, when they didn't listen, I got upset. And that's simply because they didn't understand me. They didn't understand what I was attempting to share with them. And it's simply because I didn't do a good enough job at giving them the chance to understand.
Correct. And that's why you can't force anything. Sometimes when we grow up and we want to be understood, there's a right time for it. Sometimes we have to go through all the mud, the quicksand, the obstacles, like every single thing in the way, so that when we finally get to the point when they're ready to listen and we're ready to share, that the signal can be received. But sometimes that signal cannot be received because everybody's just in it for themselves. They don't even understand themselves. They don't care to understand themselves, but they expect everybody in the world to, to fit around them or to do exactly what they say. That's not leadership, right? Leadership says, you know what, I'm going to understand great things about myself, what I am capable of doing. I'm going to make sure that I have order in all the different areas of my life, so that when others see that as a role model, they can say, you know what, there are no holes. There's nothing to pick apart. There's nothing to take apart, because you've done it, you've mastered it. So that when you do that, then you help others who are lonely no longer feel lonely. That's why we built a community, Angelo. That's why for everybody listening who's part of that community, have nothing but great things to say, because they have been basically understood.
Mm-hmm.
And now they start to understand the people in their environment and see where they were wrong before, just like you said.
Exactly. And then you're able to just help them more. You're able to help them better when you can understand the people that are in your life.
Exactly.
So I know that there's a lot of different forms of loneliness, and some people like handle it a lot differently than other people. But I think that one of the biggest things that everybody could do is to just reach out. You have to take some step or initiative in order to get out of that pattern, because loneliness, it can be a pattern. And I also think what's pretty interesting is that you may not think somebody's lonely, but deep down they may be, because I think the best relationship that you can cultivate is the one that you have with yourself. And I feel like in today's world, that's something that is very undervalued. It's not taken into account. It's something that's pushed away to the side because it's not fancy. It's not fun to, face yourself. It's not fun to do that. Like it's the bitterness, right? And I feel that a lot of people, rather than doing that, they'd rather scroll through their phone, or they'd rather go out with friends. But really, just because you're surrounded by people, just because you're watching people, you're watching these lives, it doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't lonely. Because I think loneliness, it starts and ends with yourself and the relationship that you have with you. And so to everybody that wants to have a better relationship with themselves, number one, from my experience, it was very difficult for me to do that on my own. So I needed some help. I needed some outside help. And, that's what we want to give to you. That's why we exist, to help share how Herman is really able to understand you, help you understand yourself, so that you can really navigate through all those things and be the greatest person possible.
Well said, Angelo. And for everybody listening to this, let's end loneliness now. Let's end it together. How about that? We have so many resources available to you. Text in. If you want to be a part of our free live or our free webinar, let us know. That's where we cure a lot of loneliness.
Exactly. Those are always so powerful. So if you haven't experienced one yet, then you have to. So we'll put a link in the description to the different resources that we mentioned. And again, we encourage you to take some action, because it starts with us. And if we truly want to end loneliness, we have to break that habit within ourselves. And like Herman said, step up and be a leader so we can help other people do the same.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you.
Herman, do you have any final thoughts on loneliness that you would like to share?
Let's all stop being lonely. Let's end it. Let's forever end that loneliness, and let's do something great in life together. How about that?
Starts right now.
Do it.
Period.
Period.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like. If you have not, be sure to subscribe if you have not, so you don't miss any episodes. Again, text in 818-928-3639. You'll be able to chat with Herman directly, ask any questions, get engaged, and we'll be happy to share those resources with you as well. So be sure to check the description for those. And as always, we'll see you on the next episode.
Take care.
Thank you.